Good evening all, you're watching Election 2024 special transmission from Aaj News and I'm Sadia Samson. And finally, Pakistan is ready to vote. It had not been easy. It was not an easy journey. Not for anybody, I believe. But finally, we are at a point where we know that on 8th of Feb, we all will be voting, hopefully. And we will make sure from this platform that we convince all the young generation and everybody who lives in Pakistan, who is a citizen of Pakistan, that they decide to vote. Vote for whoever they want to, but they should use their right to vote. Recently, we have seen extreme weathers in all of the Pakistan, and people were pretty not sure if they are going to vote, if it is going to be difficult. But out of all, we saw Karachi drowning yesterday. Couple of days rain and it pretty much opened everything that has been done for Karachi and by Karachi and Karachiites and all the politicians who believe that Karachi is the financial hub of Pakistan. And now every Karachiite is probably thinking the significance of vote. We are going to talk about Karachi, but we are definitely going to cover the whole of Pakistan, the election campaigns of all the political parties, their manifesto, and all the promises they are making. And in between, we are also going to make sure that we do discuss where are we standing as far as the financial condition of Pakistan is concerned, as far as the economical situation of Pakistan is concerned, and all the promises that we have seen recently all the political parties making, are they really practical? So I'm going to start. We have in panel today Sidra Iqbal, senior anchor person. With her, we have Munizae Jahangir, senior anchor person for Aaj News, and we have Bilal. He's going to help us analyze the economical and business situation. Welcome all to the show. Sidra, it was not obviously an easy journey when we spoke about election maybe 2 months back, maybe even a month back. It was not easy. But everybody talks about Karachi. Everybody, even we've seen PLMN, like they wanted to put their power in Pakistan. They wanted to select some of their candidates from Karachi, and they wanted to make sure that they are ready for Karachi as well. We have seen People's Party always saying that Karachi belongs to People's Party. We see MQM doing the same as well. But when situations like this come, we see how helpless Karachi is. And I believe that has pretty much opened up the options for all the voters who really want to understand where Karachi stands today.
So, Sadia, what I understand, you're intrigued about Karachi just as we all are. Karachi, no doubt, is the business hub for Pakistan. There are about 581 candidates who are vying for the 22 National Assembly seats from Karachi. The problem with Karachi's importance in the overall political scenario links to the fact that whoever wins from Karachi is kind of not really important if you would like to formulate a government in Sindh, which as it's not the same case when we look at a city like Lahore. You have to win from Lahore, you have to deliver in Lahore if you are vying to be the for making a government in the province of Punjab. But interestingly, if we zoom out for a little bit, this particular elections is going to be very interesting because in 2018, PTI we saw entering into the Karachi arena of politics, and it was seen as the third option. And a lot of case studies have been written about it, but the rise of power and again the fall of grace has been attributed to various factors. If you really look at the 4 years of PTI's reign, not much has been delivered in Sindh and in particular in Karachi. Although the slogan that they had back in 2018 was your next Prime Minister, your next President will all belong from Karachi, and therefore you'll see a subsequent change. They promised you a transformation.
They also made a 100-day plan specifically for Pakistan water supplies and everything.
And that transformation never happened because they did not have the best of relations with Pakistan People's Party. And this again, if you again look at the macro picture, it's interesting because one former Prime Minister at present sits behind bars and is not going to be competing and contesting in these elections, whereas the other former Prime Minister has just returned from exile, and in the last 2 months most of his criminal convictions have been swept away. So this makes the election very interesting. I saw a number of international publications actually reporting it as, the Khan and Hamas have actually swapped positions. So let's see what it means for Karachi and for Pakistan. It's going to be a very interesting election.
Right. And as Sidra said, that if we zoom out and look at a broader picture of all that has happened recently, could you believe, like 2 months back, we were talking about extreme weathers in Pakistan. We were pretty concerned if the elections are going to be even practical in February, when it is going to be snowing maybe in KPK and upper areas, and there were a lot of doubts. We saw a couple of things happening in Senate as well, and we saw some of the parties not agreeing on the fact that if we are going to actually go into elections or not. But here we are ready. With all the insecurities we have really put in, with all the reservations all the politicians may have had, security situation and everything, but we're finally into that space where we're going to be voting very soon. It really happens in other countries as well, but there's never a doubt if we are going to go in the election or they're not going to go in the election. Why do we see it in Pakistan, this uncertainty? Before every election, there is this thing, one thing that we say, election hoga, election nahi hoga. So even maybe a week back we saw that coming, but finally when election commission stood up and said the election is going to happen no matter what, regardless whatever the situation is. Why do we see that in Pakistan?
Well, I think this election is unique in the way that we haven't had clarity whether this election is actually going to take place on the date that the Election Commission of Pakistan or the courts of Pakistan said that it will happen. We didn't see that in the 2013 election, and we certainly didn't see that in the 2018 election. It has been this election which has been so uncertain. The date has been so uncertain, and that is the reason, you know, I've covered now, this is the fourth election, general election that I'm covering, and I'll tell you that I have not seen this kind of uncertainty before. The political parties were not ready. You know, they have to get their voters list, they have to get their candidates prepared, they have to get the campaign going, and everybody was very late going into the campaign field. And I saw that as a result, they were not able to put their thoughts together, put their manifestos together in a more organized fashion. And so unfortunately, because of that uncertainty, we saw that reflected not only in the delivery of the political parties, but also in the way that they wanted to put themselves forward and put their message out to the people. What is it that each political party stood for? If you look at the last elections, and yes, they were also, as Sidra rightly put before, that first it was PMLN that was at the receiving end of the stick. Now it's the PTI that's the receiving end of the stick.
Right.
But having said
and
that,
still PP is complaining that they haven't gotten the level playing field. So
they've received the stick many times before. So they've had their good share of the stick. But if you look at the way, you know, in Pakistan, it's irony of all ironies.
yes,
It is today the PTI, but they believe that it, you know, for the PTI everything has happened for the very first time. They keep forgetting that there was once called in East Pakistan, and over there also there were politicians who were kept out of the fray. There was this famous law called the Ebdo, which basically ousted all the politicians because they said they were all corrupt, and that's where the seeds of distrust, or you know, began with the West Pakistan. But without going into the history of this, I think the problem with this election has been that the political parties and political leaders have not been able to articulate exactly what their manifestos are, what their ideologies are, and take it to the voter like they have in the past. And we all know the reason, it is the stick. So I think that when you wield the stick,
right,
the democratic process is shrunk. And when the democratic process is shrunk, it has an impact on the elections. There's one thing I like to say, because you spoke about Karachi, and I'm a Lahoriite. I landed yesterday to complete flood.
You had a Karachi adventure.
I had a Karachi adventure, and one, you know, and I was very distressed because there was water in the car and there was nowhere to go. And the nice thing about our people is that even in the most darkest of moments, they keep their sense of humor. So there was this post which said, "Welcome to Karachi, it's now the Venice of Pakistan." You know, so in Karachi there have been, they say that there are too many cooks spoil the broth. And I think that is what has happened in Karachi. You haven't had a single government here which has been in power in local government, in the provincial and in the federal. If you, now that you do have a strong provincial government and a local government, let's see how Karachi will be improved upon, or there will be development work. But there certainly needs to be, if you look at it this way, how important the election in Karachi is. There are 22 National Assembly seats, general seats that people will be contesting on. In Balochistan, there are only 16. 16.
Yes.
So Balochistan, a huge province and largest in terms of mass, I suppose. I think it is the largest right now, compared to one small, you know, comparatively smaller Karachi. So,
as a city, maybe you're saying that in general, yes, but in terms of economy, you can never ignore the fact that how important Karachi is.
Back. I think I absolutely agree with what Munizae just said. There's no political incentive for people to be vested here. Like, look at PMLN. Generally, out of all the political parties, it's supposed to be the most business friendly. It's supposed to be the most economy friendly. And every time they've been there, we've seen, you know, the infrastructure improves, the business improves, prices are stable, the dollar versus rupee rate is stable. But unfortunately, in the last 10 years, the only time the Prime Minister visits Karachi is if he has to, you know, hand over a few exporters' trophies, or if he'd like to have some corner meetings with businessmen. Yeah. They're not interacting with the people and the young people of Pakistan. You're not, and that is the reason why Karachi, despite being your economic engine, is right now regarded to be the least livable city of the world. I mean, that's something which should be an eye-opener.
Yeah, or maybe the other reason is that Karachi is still producing enough revenue that they really don't have to look down and visit Karachi and really improve it in a lot of senses, because even in the worst, Karachi is doing a lot as far as finances is concerned.
Honestly, as a Karachiite, I hate the word resilience, because it feels, you know, it's almost dismissive, it's insensitive.
Or maybe it is taken for granted.
It's not resilient.
But please,
when you're not,
to make you all feel better, please look at the smog in Lahore. None of us can breathe.
I feel so
So I mean, come on. In this election, we're not just looking at, you know, we should also look at population. If we keep growing at this rate, we can have 100 development budgets and projects. How you're going to, you know, keep up with the population growth? And secondly, the smog, climate change is a big issue, should be a big issue in this election.
I tell you what, the second highest smog and population was in Karachi after Lahore. So we've been there for like about a couple of weeks.
So but very interestingly, Pakistan People's Party's manifesto right now is focused on the fact they're pledging for doubling wages, and they would like to be in the forefront of combating the climate change. And their solution to that, as their manifesto would quote, is that there are going to be budget cuts if you can just cut down on government spending and the subsidies given to the wealthy and the elite. So they're trying to sort of target the elite, and I'd love to hear from Bilal on that.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to comment on the individual manifestos, but just on your point of cutting subsidies for whoever they want to cut it for. We don't have a lot of fiscal space. Yeah. We don't have any room to wiggle, especially right now, because we are already enrolled in an IMF program, right? It's very rare for Pakistan to be able to be going into an election with IMF at its back already. Last elections, there was room for the previous government to actually introduce some populist measures and then move into elections. This time around, there hasn't been any room to wiggle and sort of convince the IMF that we want to be able to do this. So this election is especially like very interesting for the business economy side as well, because in the last 2, 3, 4 decades, the economic uncertainty level has never been this high. Even in terms of political, sure, I'm really sorry, but political uncertainty keeps going up and down. Right. Economic uncertainty has never been this high in the 1.5 decades that I've been covering business and economy.
You know what I'd really like to see is anybody in their manifesto talking about the middle class. People talk about either the underserved and the bottom of the pyramid, yes, or the elite capture, but nobody really talks about the rent paying, wage earning, salaried class.
They have.
And unfortunately, I mean, look at it. The tax cuts. We are getting no tax breaks. Petrol is up by another 13 rupees per litre right before elections. You're absolutely right about the populist measures being missing.
But the question I want to really ask you is: you've read all the manifestos. What they're promising, do they have does Pakistan have the money to deliver on that?
Okay, I'll refrain from commenting on the individual ones, but I'll give you a broader sense of what I understood from their manifestos. Yes, they're promising a lot of things that sound good to the voter. They sound good to hear because you really want, not free electricity, you really want inflation levels to come down. You really want tax rates to come down. But is there room to be able to do any of that? No, there isn't. And to Sidra's point, and I'm really glad that you brought it up also, because India moved ahead because it empowered its middle class. Pakistan right now, apparently, and I'm just going to go in the comments and the analysis part of it, Pakistan apparently doesn't have a middle class. So either we have really poor people, and we have really rich,
Rich people.
And you listen to anyone's
But this
commentary.
middle class diminished in the last maybe 5 to 8 years. It wasn't like this earlier.
Yes, and even when you hear analysis or comments on Pakistan's economy, nobody talks about those middle, that entire 60 to 50% portion of income salaried group people. When you think about the economy, you have to be inclusive, right? You cannot ignore a significant portion of people who actually go to work every day, try and make ends meet, come back home. You're only talking about two different aspects. One, the wealthy, who are apparently not paying as much as they should, and the other one is the extremely poor, who have to be supported by income support
But we have a
programs.
substantial middle class, don't we?
We do, and but nobody talks about it.
But it's fast vanishing. I mean, looking at the purchasing power, the inflation. But Munizae, I have a question for you. And you've been covering human rights. You understand the judicial and the legal matters as well. What do you think Pakistanis get motivated about, and what do they vote on the basis of? Is it still ethnicity, zaat, biradari? And especially, I want to know your reaction to the Iddat case verdict that has come in, because a lot of people who are advocating for women's rights have been absolutely shocked by that verdict.
No, absolutely. They should be shocked by that verdict, simply because it's very difficult to get divorce in Pakistan if you're a woman. And now if you have jilted, mean husbands challenging your next marriage,
Toxic.
It'll be very difficult for women to go into a court of law and demand, that they be married again. The other thing is that we
And
have
probably
seen...
they now have to prove one more thing. If they are free from their last ceremony or not, they have to prove this, because every person on the other side or every party on the other side is going to question about it. It is going to become a trend very soon, I believe.
Exactly,
It's
that's
going
the
to
reason why
really
it's
haunt. It is
Well,
going to really
that
haunt
depends
our
on
people.
whether this judgment, don't forget it's the lower courts.
Yes.
So as it goes up, whether it's upheld in the upper courts, my sense is that this kind of a judgment may not, because it's so poorly drafted.
Right.
But however, it sends a very bad signal. That if you are getting married and you go into court and you want another, you want to get rid of your previous husband, that you will be questioned. What we have seen, and people say, oh, this has never happened before. Of course it has happened before. Women are violated and their dignity is violated every day in Pakistani courts.
Yes.
But to
Right.
see it at such a high level and to see it at such a somebody who's a public figure, that is what is very
Somebody
worrying.
is well connected, well liked, a public figure, public facing person, and even the lady in question, she's 60 years of age,
Yes.
and she's had to stand in front of a court full of men explaining her iddat period and her monthly cycle
And not
days.
just
That's
this,
degrading.
Sidra.
That is
Have you
degrading.
also forgotten her diary that was published, a little time back, and everybody was talking about the diary, what is written inside. I mean, like, look at us. One side, we will be tweeting every day if anybody's diary has been opened by anybody, any normal person.
I
and
want to
when-
understand, do you think it is purely politics that none of the other advocates and very well-known advocates in our political scenario, our politicians, have not really raised a caution or concern over this?
But they have refrained from commenting on it.
Yes.
I think that is very significant. But I want to just say that in our courts, the way that this case was rushed, there are so many other people who are on the death row. I'll give you
Yes.
the example of Junaid Hafiz, who is accused of blasphemy, and people say that he's wrongly accused of blasphemy. But at the same time, he's been in solitary confinement for so many years. Those cases have not come. The women who come to us who talk about, some are acid burns, some the nose cut off, hands cut off. We go to court and we are looking for the day that there will be a hearing, and there hasn't been a hearing in years.
Years,
But
yes,
suddenly the court is very keen to, have this iddat case,
Yes.
move fast forward. So it's laughable. And I would just like to say
Right.
one more thing, if I may, is that when you talk about, the dignity of a woman, you cannot drag a woman into court and violate her dignity in the manner that it has been done to Bushra Bibi. It is not just distasteful, it is also in some ways unethical and in violation of her fundamental rights.
Right.
And that is something that we need to look at. That is why people are so unhappy about this
But do you
judgment.
feel that has been the case throughout? I mean, so many women politicians in the last 1.5 years, and even before that, I mean, Pakistan People's Party has faced it, PMLN has faced it, Mariam Nawaz herself faced it. They've been put in exile. All the reforms that we had, all the amendments in our bills, and how a woman should be treated, what's the importance of her own affidavit and her own verdicts, her own statements, it seems to be, put behind in the back door.
But what is interesting is that when they talk about honor, and in Pakistan everything is about honor.
Yes. Get it.
And when they start fighting amongst, when men start fighting amongst each other, the first thing they pull out is a woman's honor.
Yeah.
So I think it's very ironical that they attack a woman's dignity, yet at the same time they fight for it also. So I think
probably that is the weakest nerve as well. That is why everybody attacks there, because the way we perceive how the honor of a woman, probably that is why we attack them as well, because we know that's going to hurt the most.
no, it's not that. It's because they are vulnerable, and it's considered to be a weaker sex. That's why. But I mean, I would also like to talk about the fact that the women candidates are now contesting. More women candidates are contesting elections than we have seen before,
And minorities as well.
the reason being that some of the men are in prison, and therefore the women are contesting in their place. A good example is in place of Usman Dar, for example, his mother is contesting an election. So in many cases we have seen that women have got an opportunity to contest the election because the men have been kept back because they are either in prison or facing
regarding
cases.
that. You know, just a flashback came to mind when Pervez Musharraf went in for a graduate assembly and making sure that there are 33% representation of women in the assemblies. But he said, how does that compare to that chapter of history? Now we have women coming out and contesting in elections because the men in the family are not allowed to. At that time as well, they were trying to fulfill this particular requirement that A, they could be graduates, B, they could be women, so there were reserved seats and otherwise. How does that compare?
And look what it brought us. It brought us Hina Rabani Khar,
Yes.
who then became our, foreign minister and a very well respected one. So I think affirmative action in some cases and reserve seats in some cases has thrown up very credible women and very credible faces
Who otherwise would have been
who otherwise would not have come into the fray. So it's a very positive sign. Yet at the same time, I have also seen in Peshawar that there was one particular religious group, and I went to interview the woman that was contesting on that seat, and when I called her up, she said, I don't even know that I am contesting an election. So she didn't even know, she was not even told that she was contesting an election. So in some cases they also do what is called Khana Puri.
Yes.
But I was very happy to see that this time you also had the first provincial speaker of Gilgit-Baltistan as a woman.
Yes.
We've had some fantastic firsts.
And starting from where I've just been told that we have to take this little break. Coming after this break, we'll the manifesto of all the parties and going to shed some light on People's Party as well. Stay with us. Welcome back again. So we're going to continue where we left you. We're going to talk about a little more about economy, and I'm going to go to Bilal for that. How has the caretaker government been as far as the economy of this country is concerned? Because they had a lot of burden, they had a lot of targets to achieve, but have they really met their targets?
Look, so they didn't obviously come with a mandate, and they didn't have very clear ambitions, obviously, on how to fix a certain thing or have a roadmap on how they would want to fix some things. They took over at a very, very bad time for the economy, and it's probably going to happen. I don't know. Obviously, I can't predict that trajectory. But whenever a government changes at the helm in Islamabad, you see a lot of uncertainty kicking in because you don't know what the future would be like. When it came to the caretaker government, September and October were really bad months because the dollar hit 320. All of a sudden, they needed to do a lot of things together. In terms of their overall performance, I would, however, give them that point on being able to stabilize the economy. But we've moved so far beyond just stabilization measures because our economy is old now and it's showing the symptoms of its cancer that has been there for so many decades. That now that those band-aids won't work, and you can keep talking about stabilization measures. They won't work anymore. And yes, the caretaker government did take those stabilization measures, but at the end of the day, I mean, they did bring down the dollar to a level where it was slightly more acceptable to the business community, given what our current account deficit was like.
You mean artificially? It wasn't just market forces?
I mean, a lot of people will argue that the dollar hitting 320 was artificial. a lot of people would argue that it came back to 280 because it was artificial.
But then we did work on smuggling of dollar and everything, and people who stole dollar, and we did really took a lot of measures. Did that really help?
I think, the policing will not really help us. As a country and as a society, we need to wake up and take charge of the things that are around us. Like, look at the last 6 months only. Let's call a spade a spade. The imports had actually gone up to about 336 billion. Whereas if you look at the corresponding, year on year, if you look at the last year, it was 318 billion. Right. So we have had a massive 5.6% increase in just the imports. The trade deficit is there. Overall, yes, you've curbed imports, but only because your purchasing power has actually gone down. If I take a small example, tea. I mean, a lot of people would argue that tea is for the elite because in Pakistan you don't really grow a single tea leaf. But it is a national drink, and it is the drink for the middle class and the lower middle class. If you just look at the last,
Pakistan has the ability to grow.
No, Sadia, what I want to get at is in the last 6 months, 93 billion rupees worth of tea has been consumed by Pakistan.
Imported.
This doesn't look like a country that is worried about its economy. I mean, we need to be focused on our priorities. We are giving incentive in our petroleum strategy for more upstream exploration to happen. But when we haven't explored new resources, what do we do with them? By 2045, if we continue with the consumption patterns that we have right now, just the energy import bill of Pakistan is going to cross 60 billion US dollars. This is sustainable by no measure. So we need to put our own house in order. So for the government that is going to take office back in February, it's going to be a long to-do list. They have to put the chaos of politics behind them. They need to stabilize the economy. They need to make sure that there's consensus, and all the people who are not going to be winners in this election, they're not going to make this easy for them either.
But Munizae, we don't see our politicians talking about this, the facts, the problems that we are facing, the real problems of Pakistan. We did discuss that all the middle class has almost diminished. We don't see that anymore. But we don't talk about the real issues. We don't talk about the small businesses. We don't talk about the entrepreneurship. We don't talk about the startups. We don't talk about how costly it is in Pakistan to start a new business and manufacture a factory. We don't talk about anything like that. We don't talk about what we need in Pakistan. Rather, we go how we want to stop people importing things. We're going to raise the price of all the imports. But that's all we do.
No, in a way that you're correct, that we are constantly looking at the trade balance. But, we have, if you look at the manifestos of all the political parties, except one or two, they have spoken about these issues. But I think that the real issue is, as you asked that question quite rightly, is that what was the caretaker government hoping to achieve, and why was it extended by a 3-month period? Under our laws and the constitution, the caretaker government should only last for 3 months. This specific caretaker government is unique, that it lasted in 6 months, for 6 months. And why did it last for 6 months? It was expected to do a couple of things. One of them was, and they made that amendment, if you remember, they brought in a bill and they made an amendment to the laws, whereby it gave them the right to finish projects that had been started. Which project that has been started has the caretaker government finished? Secondly, I would like to ask the question of Bilal, and maybe we can do it tomorrow after he's done all his fact check, that how much money did the caretaker government borrow, and how was it, why was it so essential to have the caretaker government for 6 months? What did it do that justified it staying on for 6 months? I think that is the big question over here. We had a caretaker government, we gave it special powers, we extended and we manipulated the law, we turned it this way and that way to suit that caretaker government. And what did that caretaker government do? What it did do, I would like to tell you, is that they did oppress discontent in Balochistan, which is a large province. It is being accused of not giving a level playing field, which was exactly what it had come in to do. The caretaker government, and the sole purpose of any caretaker government, is to ensure that there is a level playing field. Did this caretaker government do it, or did it fail?
And yet all the political parties are complaining that they have not been offered the level playing field that they needed. Here I have to finish for today, and I'm going to take a little break, and we come back and start with our new panel. Stay with us.